You listen to me, you go to the top.
What is up, everyone? GoodMicWork commentaries back at you with an impromptu episode 455. I am your host, Greg Morgan, and I am a very, very sad host today. The wrestling world suffered one of its biggest losses here today on September 17th, 2017. Bobby the Brain Heenan has passed away. I literally just read this news on Twitter a matter of minutes ago. It looks like Jim Ross was the first person that I saw had mentioned anything about it. The news is spreading like wildfire now, and within just a few minutes, I'm sure the entire wrestling world will know. Have not seen any news sites report this news, so I guess there's no official confirmation, but a lot of people in the wrestling business are reaching out and sending their condolences to the family of Bobby Heenan, so this looks legit. So I figured I better come up here and do a video. The problem is I'm in the middle of moving, and I'm in no way prepared to do a video. So as I paced around my house for a couple of minutes and processed the news, I decided to dig out of all of the boxes my microphone and everything that I need, plugged it into my computer, which is still up and running, and I am taking a break from moving to make a quick video about Bobby the Brain Heenan. It's not going to be a long video. I'm just going to share with you a few thoughts and acknowledge his passing. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I'm probably not going to be up here till Thursday of next week with my Raw and SmackDown review and No Mercy predictions and all that stuff. And I was like, I cannot wait that long to mention and talk about Bobby the Brain Heenan. So this might even cost me a few dollars because I have some movers and I'm paying them by the hour, and I'm going to be less prepared now since I'm taking a break to do this commentary, but it's for Bobby and it's well worth it, and I definitely want to come up here and share some of my thoughts on him with all of you. We know that he was in terrible health. He's been in bad health for a while, well over 10 years, maybe 13, 14 years now. Even when he went into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004, it had started. He had a really kind of raspy and bad voice. He had gone through a couple of surgeries by that point, and he went downhill pretty quick. He seemed like he was fine around 2001, and then after that, his health really started to decline to where he looked really bad. I mean, he would still make public appearances. He would still do the wrestling conventions and sign autographs. He's still, even in his condition, not being able to speak and being completely unrecognizable to the fans because of the multiple surgeries he had. He still was out there, every month at conventions and meeting everybody, and still enjoyed it till literally the day he died. So Bobby Heenan, he brought so much to the wrestling business. He offered so much. He's so underrated in so many ways. He could have been a movie star. The way he was so quick-witted and he was so clever, and he was just very good at every single job he had in the wrestling business. Of course, he's best known for being one of the best managers in wrestling history, and I feel is the best manager in wrestling history because he had it all. He came across as a manager. He kind of had that businessman type of look. He was also a horrible heel. He was dastardly. He would get physically involved. He would get mentally involved. He could completely slice and dice people to death in promos. He was a great mouthpiece for guys that needed a mouthpiece, and even for guys who didn't need a mouthpiece. I think of guys like Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude. They don't need a manager, but Bobby really helped their careers despite that. He managed a ton of champions in his day. I remember him all the way back in the AWA when he was a manager there, managing Nick Bockwinkel in his matches with Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. And another thing people don't realize about Bobby Heenan is that he was an extremely underrated wrestler. Reminded me a lot of Ray Stevens, who was one of my favorite wrestlers back in the day, back in the 70s. You watch Ray Stevens work and it's art. And Bobby Heenan had a lot of those same characteristics that Stevens had. Even the same look, blonde hair, a little bit pudgy, but could move, was super quick. Even as a manager in the WWE, you guys would see Bobby Heenan take bumps. He could do that great over the top rope bump that he would go like all the way over the ring post. He could take phenomenal bumps, and he was very light on his feet, despite being, a little bit bigger of a guy. So Bobby Heenan not only could manage, he could also wrestle. And then later on in his career, he transitioned into the commentary booth and became one of the most entertaining color commentators of all time. He was even doing it back when he was a manager, 86 and 87 and 88. He'd be behind the commentary booth every now and then, and he was so amazing. And nobody can ever forget his amazing chemistry with Gorilla Monsoon. The two of them together, I think, are etched in wrestling fans' memories till the end of time. There was never a better duo than Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. They were very close friends in real life, and their chemistry on screen was like nothing that we've ever seen with two non-wrestling talents. And they both had a long history in the business. Gorilla Monsoon, you know, his career speaks for itself. He had a legendary wrestling career, and then his voice behind the commentary booth was synonymous with WWE programming back in the 80s and 90s. You know, when I think back to matches that I love and enjoy, I hear Gorilla Monsoon's voice, and I hear a lot of Bobby Heenan's voice too. Some of my favorite matches of all time, like the Bret Hart Mr. Perfect match, the Bret Hart Roddy Piper match at WrestleMania 8. Matches like that, one of the things I remember the most about those matches is Bobby the Brain Heenan's voice selling the action in the ring. So I am devastated by this news. My heart goes out to his family and everybody that knew Bobby. I mean, it was a long battle. I mean, there was times when I thought Bobby Heenan was going to die 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, this is very serious. The man had throat cancer, and he underwent countless amounts of procedures to where his face was gone. And he kept fighting, and he kept fighting, and he kept fighting all the way up until the end. I have not read any details on what exactly killed him. I don't know if it was just succumbing to the cancer or it might have been something completely different. I'm sure we'll find that out in a matter of minutes or hours here, but if I was going to come up and make any video of Bobby, I have to do it right now. So forgive me for not knowing all of the details quite yet. Usually when there's a death in wrestling, I wait a little while. A lot of people come up and make videos right away within seconds of the news breaking. I usually hold back and wait just to get some more information on the death and the circumstances and all of that. I would love to hear all of your memories of Bobby Heenan. I mean, this is a sad one. I mentioned on Twitter as soon as the news broke that this one hurts me like Savage. This one hurts me like Owen. We've endured so many deaths in the wrestling business, many of them tragically. At least Bobby Heenan had a legit illness. He lived a full life. He died an old man. And he has nothing to be ashamed of as far as his wrestling career goes or his personal life. He was always just a stand-up guy, and everybody loved him, and he was respected across the board. You don't see that very often when you ask anybody in the wrestling business. You ask 999 wrestlers out of 1,000, and they are going to have positive things to say about Bobby the Brain Heenan. And that's not the case with a lot of people in the wrestling business. So I admire Bobby Heenan not only for his career, but the way he lived his life and how hard he fought at the end against his illness and continued to make appearances and continued to be out there meeting the fans. And he just enjoyed it. And it seemed like even with his horrible condition, he still enjoyed getting out and doing things. He wasn't ashamed of anything. He'd be out there front and center. A lot of my listeners are in the younger demographic, maybe in their 20s. They might not have a whole lot of memories about Bobby Heenan other than what they've seen in videotapes. But I recommend to everybody that maybe doesn't remember him the way somebody older like myself does, to go back and just watch some of his work, even if it's matches that he's just calling. Watch what he does in the ring. Go back and watch some of his wrestling matches. Go back and watch how he evolved as a manager, all the way back from the AWA through the WWE, some of the great promos he cut, some of the great men that he managed, and some of the champions in the WWE. And of course, he was involved in some serious main events in the WWE back in the day. The one that comes to mind the most is WrestleMania 3. He was in the corner of Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan, probably the most famous wrestling match in wrestling history, and I was proud to say that I was there to see it live. And I'll never forget that night either. Bobby Heenan, how dejected he was after Andre was beaten, and just him wearing all white and just being so ready to crown this new glorious champion. And his guy is going to be running the WWE and the new world champion, the guy to dethrone Hulk Hogan after a 5-year run, and to have it all come crumbling down around him, and how dejected he was and riding away in the cart as the fans are throwing garbage at him. I mean, it was great. He had some iconic calls in wrestling history as well. Of course, the formation of the NWO. Some people argue that Bobby Heenan might have even spoiled that a little bit. I argue that it's kind of both ways. He might have spoiled it a little bit, but Bobby was just being Bobby, and he never trusted Hulk Hogan. And he basically told everybody that I told you so. So Heenan, his voice when it comes to wrestling, when it comes to big matches, when it comes to just big situations or moments in general, he's a part of a lot of them in a lot of different ways, whether it's announcer, manager, wrestler, whatever. Speaking of wrestler, another match that comes to mind, remember WrestleMania 4 when he wore the dog protective gear when he was wrestling the Bulldogs, and was it Tito or was it Coco? Bulldogs and Coco, and it was him and the Islanders, and he wore this burlap fucking sack to the ring. Absolutely hilarious. The guy had absolutely zero problem with humiliating himself for the sake of entertainment. And I don't know how many times he was humiliated by Matilda or stuffed in a weasel suit by the Ultimate Warrior or anything like that. The guy just had moment after moment after moment, and everything he did was a home run. So very sad today. Very, very sad. And wrestling deaths are just a part of life. It's something we all deal with. And the Bobby Heenan death is not something that necessarily shocks me, considering his health. We knew this day was coming, and it was probably coming soon. But still, it doesn't make the news any easier, and it's devastating to hear something like this. So anyway, I'm going to spend the rest of the day finishing up my move, packing up, and maybe throwing on some Bobby Heenan moments on the WWE Network as I work. So you guys have a great rest of your weekend. For those of you who are wondering about my next episode, it will be 456. It'll probably be coming Thursday, possibly even Friday. Since I have to include No Mercy predictions as well, it could go one of those 2 days, but I'm going to try to get it up to you by Thursday. So it'll be just a tiny bit late than it is normally, but I can already tell this move is going to be a pain in the ass, and it's going to take a lot of time. So I don't want to promise a video on Wednesday and then I'm unable to do it. So check back late week. By then, we'll probably know a little bit more about Bobby Heenan. I will elaborate more on him in my next episode, because by then we'll probably hear some details of his passing, and there will probably be more to talk about. So, yeah, until then, you guys just leave me all your memories of Bobby Heenan in the comments below, what you loved about him, and some of the things you remember him most for. So I will talk to you guys very soon. Check back to the YouTube channel this week for my next episode, and follow me on Twitter at GoodMicWork for any up-to-date thoughts on the passing of Bobby the Brain Heenan. Rest in peace, Brain.